Hello everybody, I'm Quinn, I'm the designer of Heliosail, and today we're going to be talking about combat. I'm trying to keep these videos short, but this one might be a little bit of a longer one, just because I really want to explain this as well as I can. The combat chapter begins on page 140, and it works basically the same for ground combat and space combat, but today we're just going to cover ground combat. You don't roll for initiative in Heliosail. Instead, turns are determined by what someone does. So combat begins the first time someone, whether it's a crew member or an NPC, attacks somebody else. And that is the opening turn, and that is their first action of their first turn. On your character sheet, over on the left-hand side, next to where your HP is listed, you have a little box that lists your number of actions. This is the number of actions you can take each round in combat. You can use any number of actions on your turn until you pass the spotlight to someone else. We refer to this as spotlight initiative. So it kind of makes combat popcorn around the table. When Ernest attacks, let's say that there's a Navy landsman that Ernest is fighting. Attacking that NPC makes it the landsman's turn. Basically, every time you do something that directly impacts another character, whether that is one of your crewmates or an NPC, it passes the spotlight to them. It becomes that creature's turn. So let's say that Ernest decided to heal someone instead. That would pass the spotlight to that crewmate. It would then become their turn. And combat sort of just popcorns around the table this way. There are things that you can do that don't pass the spotlight. I break it all down in the combat chapter. So we're going to talk about the different types of actions that you can take. There's full actions. Attack would be the most basic one of these. You just roll your 3d8 and you add the modifier for the weapon. We did cover this a little bit in character creation, but if I go down to equipment real quick, you'll see every weapon has an area in their stat block that says attributes. These are what attribute modifier you attack with. So you roll your 3d8, you add an attribute modifier. If there's 2, you can choose. And then if you're proficient in that weapon, you add your proficiency modifier. Most of the time you will. You'll usually be using a weapon that you're proficient with. The creature you're attacking will get to roll their reaction, either dodge, parry, or equip. And you must beat the defender's reaction roll in order for the attack to be successful. Ties always go in the defender's favor. After a successful attack, you announce the damage specified by your weapon. Heliosail uses fixed damage, so you only have to do the attack rolls. You don't then have to do a damage roll. If you roll a critical success with any weapon, the defender does not get to take their reaction. The attack just automatically hits. With smaller weapons that deal critical damage, you also get to deal additional damage with your critical success. After this attack, the spotlight is passed to the defender, as I said before. Then there's things called double actions. So these are things that require spending 2 actions to perform. These come in a couple of different flavors. So sometimes the beginning of the description will say you have to spend 2 actions to do this. Sometimes it's worded so that the effect is that you've spent 2 actions, but you don't necessarily have to perform the second half, so it's worded a little bit differently. Disarm is a perfect example of this. So deft fingers, disarm. After a successful melee attack, you have the option to spend an extra action in order to disarm your opponent before the spotlight is passed on. So this means you have attacked someone, the attack hit. Under normal combat rules, it would be that person's turn, but with this special trick, you can spend another action before the spotlight is passed in order to attempt to disarm them. There's also interrupts. So some abilities allow you to interrupt another person's turn and to take an action even though the spotlight was not passed to you organically. This usually costs 2 actions to perform. It will always specify in an ability's description. They vary quite a bit. The most common interrupt in the game is the one that all human characters have as part of their bonded trait. We have this very useful chart on page 144 that breaks down what passes the spotlight and kind of what its general cost is. So this is a good kind of cheat sheet for people. Also, conditions and duration for anything is counted by a number of actions. There's a table here on page 142 that kind of roughly breaks down how many actions there are in a second. So one action takes 4 seconds. This is not a perfect analogy, but this is the framework that we use. In most cases, the duration is counted by the actions taken by the target. So one of the most common is bleed. If you attack someone with an edged weapon and you penetrate their armor, they begin to bleed. The duration for that is 3 actions, and those are their actions which are counted. So every action they take for the next 3 actions, they lose 1 HP. If something is an area of effect, it is counted by the actions of the person who created that area of effect. And if you are experiencing any kind of ongoing effect and you use an ability that requires spending 2 actions, that still counts as 2 actions for counting duration. Reactions. So Heliosail does not work the way that your standard D20 system works. Heliosail uses contested rolls instead. So a reaction is your roll to contest being attacked. And you just get this automatically each time an attack comes your way. These are calculated the same way as any other skill check in the game. You roll 3 8-sided dice, and then you add the ability modifier for your reaction. Every archetype gets proficiency in 1 reaction. Some of them, it just states outright which one you get. A couple of them let you choose between 2 options. But either way, you get to add your proficiency bonus on top of your just regular modifiers for that. You should have calculated that during character creation. There's a whole other video for that. If you're watching this on YouTube, I will try to put the link for that either in a card or down below, depending on how long this video is. So there are 3 reactions. They correspond to your 3 core attributes. There is dodge. This corresponds to your mind attribute. It involves physically moving out of the way of an attack. There is parry, which involves blocking the attack either with your own weapon or some sort of improvised shield. You get the idea. And then there is quip. This involves forcing your attacker to flub their attack in some way. This could be yelling at them, literally making some sort of witty quip, something like that. In most cases, you will have all 3 of these available to you, and you could just pick the one that you're strongest with, but there are various situations in which you may not be able to use one. So dodge requires being able to physically move. If you are restrained or prone, then you can't dodge, and you will have bad luck trying to dodge if you're fighting in rough terrain. For parry, you have to be wielding something that you can parry with, and you can't parry if you don't have that unless you have a specific trick that allows you to. For quip, you have to be able to communicate with the enemy for quip to work. So if there's a language barrier, you can't use that reaction. If you're fighting a creature that maybe is not capable of language, you can't use that reaction. Also, if you are restrained, and therefore can't dodge and cannot parry, quip may be your only reaction that you can take. This is just a logical relationship, so I haven't laid out every single situation in which one of these may not be available to you. It is a little bit captain's call based on what makes sense to them for the situation. Free actions, so these are things that you can do that don't require spending an action. The one you'll probably be doing the most is call for aid. This does not require spending one of your own actions, and this is a way to pass the spotlight to a specific person so that they can quickly act. So the way that this works in practice is if you have a teammate who says, oh, I have a really cool thing I can do, and it's your turn, instead of choosing to attack on your turn, you could tag them in instead and immediately just pass the spotlight to them. This allows for a lot of really great team play in Heliosail's combat system. Command minion. Basically, minions act on your turn. They get 1 action of their own. Them acting does not spend any of your actions. If you want them to do more, you can donate your actions to them. For minions that are sentient, like if you're a siren and you have mind-controlled someone, you can spend their actions on their turn for however many actions they have. This is a unique system to Heliosail, and it's a little bit complicated compared to the rest of Heliosail's combat system, but I held on to it because people really liked it in playtesting. So elemental damage primes the target, so it does not deal damage immediately. What it does is stacks potential damage, and then the next time physical damage is dealt, all of that stacked up potential damage is applied at once. This is a very common combination for an engineer to have with their drone. So, say a drone deals elemental damage in the form of a taser. Let's say, every time the drone tases something, it deals 4 elemental damage. If the drone gets 3 turns, 4, 8, 12, that would be 12 elemental damage that is waiting to be applied, and then the next time the engineer comes in and hits it with their hammer, the target takes the damage from the hammer and 12 elemental damage all at once. This provides some really nice interplay with drones and engineers specifically, but there are other ways that this interplay happens. There are mechanical turrets that kind of use this same tag team interplay, things like that. There's a few sources of healing. The bioscientist's M-Med would be the most common source of healing, but a siren can also get healing from Prey Drive, and some people can take tricks for healing, such as Second Wind. A bioscientist can only heal organic targets with their M-Meds. Drones and anthroparians need someone with the repair skill to heal them, such as an engineer. And engineers can do a quick patch using Jury Rig to heal a drone or anthroparian for 3 HP, exactly the same way that a bioscientist's M-Med works. So yeah, that's sort of the basic things you can do in combat. The rhythm of it is you attack someone, it becomes their turn. Then they attack you or someone else, it becomes that person's turn. If at any point it's not clear whose turn it should be, it just automatically goes to the crew member that has the most actions remaining. The end of the round happens once everyone has spent all of their actions. At that point, the next round begins seamlessly. Elemental damage. Hello again, everybody. I'm just setting up a little model battle here with a online dice roller so that we can kind of get a feel for the flow of combat together. Now, for the sake of this model, I have set everybody at more or less the same level. Everyone has the same amount of HP, except for this lowercase a here, this drone. Drones usually have high damage reduction, low HP. All crew members have the same number of actions, just to make it nice and simple. And everybody's attacks, reactions, damage reduction, damage dealt, healing dealt are all the same. Now, in an actual battle, these are going to vary from character to character, so you have to make sure that you know what your character's kit is. But just for the sake of a mock battle, we're just going to set everything the same to keep it nice and simple. Here we go. Let's say the crew, A, B, and C here, with their drone, lowercase a, is having a debate with NPCs E and D. The exchange gets heated, A loses their patience and decides they're going to attack. So they pull out their weapon, and they roll a 13 plus a 6 to attack. That is a 19 to hit. Now, that attack, regardless of whether or not it hits, is their first action, and it opens combat. So we are now out of free play and in combat. E has to roll a reaction to see if they manage to dodge. So that was a 13 to hit. They get a 15 to dodge. So E does not get hit, but it is now E's turn. E is going to turn around and try to attack the person who just attacked them. That is a 20 to hit on E's part. So E is going to try to attack A. Roll a 20. A rolls their reaction. They get a 16. That does not succeed. E successfully hits A. Deals 6 damage. A has 4 damage reduction. A is going to take 2 damage. Alright. It is now A's turn again. Now you'll notice I don't have action tracking for E or D, because NPCs just get an action every time it is their turn. So they don't have to track their actions in the same way. Since it's A's turn again, A is just going to try to hit E once again. That is a 16 to hit. E rolls their reaction and successfully gets out of the way of that. So A attempts to attack E, does not hit. That was A's second action. A is now out of actions for the round. It is E's turn. E is going to attempt to attack A again. Ooh. So that is a 10 to hit. That is not very good. Let's see if A can beat it. A manages to dodge E's attack out of the water. No problem. It is now A's turn, but they have no actions left. So they tag in their buddy B here. So they just kind of pass the turn over to B. It is now B's turn. B is going to immediately command minion. Now, commanding the minion to do something does not cost an action on B's part, and the drone has one action of its own. So the drone is going to put up a shield in front of them. So that uses the drone's action. The turn just goes back to B. They can still do something. The spotlight has not been passed at this point. And they're going to go ahead and try to attack E, who is doing all the attacking. That is 19 to try to hit E. E gets a critical success on that dodge. Now, unfortunately, a critical success on a reaction roll doesn't grant you anything particularly special, but they definitely avoid getting hit, and that was one action of B's to attack. It's now E's turn again. Now E could attack again, but let's say E knows that D has a pretty cool, better weapon than them. So E is going to tag their buddy D in, and that does not cost an action for them to do. They just kind of pass the spotlight over. D's turn. Now D just saw this drone here put up a shield and wants that down. So D is going to try to attack the drone. That is a 20 to hit the drone. The drone does get a reaction of its own. Now that's a 20 to dodge. And remember, ties go in the defender's favor. So the drone dodges that. It is now the drone's turn because the spotlight was passed to it, but it has used up its action. So it just passes that turn immediately to B. B still has an action left, so they're going to go ahead and try to attack D. That is a 24 to hit. That's pretty respectable. Versus D's 22, so that is going to hit. It is now D's turn again. D is once again going to try to attack the drone. They really want that shield down. 26. See if the drone dodges it. The drone does not. Drone takes damage. Again, it is drone's turn. Drone can't do anything here. So it passes the spotlight to its controller B, who also can't do anything, so they pass the buck to C. Remember, C is now the only one who has anything going on. C is going to go ahead and try to attack D. That is a 17, and that was one of C's actions. D manages to dodge. So D's turn. Now that D's been hit by this other person, they're going to go ahead and try to attack C, who is not behind the shield anyway. That is a 19 to hit. C rolls their reaction. Reaction is 12, so that hits. C is once again going to attempt to hit D. 26. D rolls their reaction. 19, 24. That is a successful hit, and that was C's last remaining action. That was round 1. As round 2 begins, everyone's actions gets refreshed, and at the top of the round, D will be the first actor. So here we are, round 2 begins, and it is D's turn, because the spotlight has just been passed to them. And so combat continues seamlessly in this way. D is going to go ahead and attack C. That is 20 to hit. C rolls their reaction. Versus 19 to dodge, so D successfully hits C, who then takes another 2 damage. Now, it is C's turn. They could go ahead and attack D. They are down a little bit of health, so they could go ahead and ask for healing from somebody. But they're not too dire yet, so I think they're going to go ahead and try to attack D. Let's see how that goes for them. 21 to attack. Versus 10 to dodge. Ooh, that was a critical failure to dodge. It is now D's turn again. Now D knows that they are outnumbered, so even though they are just as injured as C, they're feeling a little bit more nervous, and they're going to go ahead and call on E for help. They're asking for healing. Now it is now E's turn. They have a choice. They can either go ahead and heal their buddy as requested, pass the spotlight right back to them so they can do something, or they can attack. I think E is going to not heal their buddy because they're concerned about getting this drone's shield down. So they're going to attempt to attack the drone instead. 21 to attack. The drone gets to dodge. 22 to dodge. Drone just narrowly dodges that, and it is now the drone's turn. Now, Crew member B gets to decide what their drone does in response. Now I think because D is injured, they're going to go ahead and have their drone attack D. So that is 16 to attack, 14 to dodge. So that is going to be an successful attack. Now they're at less than half health. They are once again going to ask their buddy for healing. This time E is going to go ahead and heal them. It is now D's turn once again, feeling a little bit better. So I think D is going to go ahead and attempt to attack the drone, who just hit them. That is 17 to hit. Drone gets more than that to do dodge. So D attempts to attack the drone dodges, has no actions left, passes the buck to B. B now gets to do something. B is going to go ahead and try to attack E because they see that they are healing. 21 to hit versus 18 to dodge. So B successfully hits E. It is now E's turn. E is going to go ahead and try to hit that drone again. Everyone wants the drone down. And critical fails that attack. So same thing, Spotlight gets past the drone, who passes it back to B here, who is going to go ahead and try to attack E once again. Alright, 19 to attack versus 21 to dodge. So B goes ahead and spends an action attempting to hit E, but doesn't successfully hit. E's turn. E, once again, is going to attack the drone. So that's going to be 16 to hit versus 15 to dodge. E gets a successful attack on that drone, and the drone is put out of commission for the rest of the fight. Now, that leaves it unclear whose turn it would be next. And whenever there's an unclarity, the person with the most turns remaining is automatically the next one to go, which means it is A's turn, and A is going to attempt to attack E. 17 to hit, 18 to dodge, so A spends an action trying to attack E, doesn't get hit. E is going to go ahead and hit back. That is 24 to hit versus 24 to dodge, and ties always go in the defender's favor. So A just barely misses that. It is A's turn again. I think A is actually going to attack D because they can see that they are a little bit injured. And crit fails. It is now D's turn. D could try to attack A, but sees that C is vulnerable. So D is going to go ahead and attack C. So that is 17 to hit versus 20 to dodge. D tries to attack C and misses. It is C's turn. C is going to go ahead and try to attack D back. 21 to hit, 12 to dodge. So C spends their last action for the round, attacking D again. So just like last time, the round would reset, and it would be D's turn at the top of the round since they were the last one to be affected. And combat would continue in this way. And that's kind of how combat goes. I really hope that this was helpful. If you have any other questions, I do kind of describe all of this in text in the chapter on combat, and then we'll go over ship-to-ship combat next. Thanks, everybody, and goodbye.